In this demo, I'm a veteran wind turbine subject matter expert, and Windtopia opened its remote monitoring and diagnostics center and staffed it with experienced engineers like myself. What I'm going to do in this demo is walk through our assets functionality in OCS Soft Cloud Services. We'll take a look at some of the wind turbines, and then we'll drill into some of the data with our trending investigation tool. So let's go ahead and go over to our demo. So here we are in OCS, in the OCS portal. And what I'm going to do is go down to our Assets Explorer, which is right here. I'm going to click on that. And we're going to look at some data in our production namespace today. Okay, so here in the Assets Explorer, you can see all the assets that we have in this production namespace. We have only 43. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to search for Mesa. And it returned an asset for the Black Mesa wind farm and then 3 other wind turbines. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of these wind turbines. Okay, so over here on the right, we see the details pane for the GE05 wind turbine. And we can see that it has a lot of metadata. Let me zoom in so you can see that better. So here's all the metadata that's available on this wind turbine. And so just like streams, you can configure static metadata on assets as well. And metadata helps provide additional context for this asset, such as the wind farm location, the manufacturer, the model number, and other properties. One of the things that we'll be working on soon is to allow you to search and filter on any of these metadata fields when searching for assets. So this will be the data-driven approach to finding your assets. So I also see this asset as an asset type of GE wind turbine here in the upper right. I'm not going to click on that in the interest of time, but asset types help you define the schema or structure for all your assets of that type, and they help you manage a fleet of assets easier and help enforce consistency across similar assets. So next, let's clear our search here and get all of our assets back. And I'm going to zoom in on some of these assets. And you can see that some of them have a green check mark here, and that's the asset status on each asset card. And so the asset status is kind of shown up as this multi-state symbol. These are currently in a good state. You could also have a warning state that's yellow or a bad state that's red. And so you're able to basically map one of the properties from the asset to be its asset status, and then you can map the values stored in that stream to be one of those 3 system states that represent the status. So this helps you monitor which assets need my attention right now, and thankfully everything is green right now, so it's all good. Next, we're going to take a look at the Properties tab, and we're just going to get rid of our trend here for a moment. And so you can see that these are all the properties and that are associated with my asset. And if we scroll down, you can see that there's a ton of data here, and you can see all the streams that are really mapped into this asset, and then all the values here. So what we're going to do is let's take a look at a different asset here. We'll look at GE10. Let's do a filter on power. And what I want to do is I'm going to trend our active power and our expected power here. And let's go ahead and open up our trend. And let's look at maybe the last 7 days of data. And then maybe let's skip backwards in time a little bit more to get some better looking data. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we see our trend here. And I can also add a cursor here if I want. And so we see that there's a time period here where my active power dropped, but my expected power was up. I can also click on another asset as well, GE8, and then GE9. So this is an asset relative display. We see the data updated when I swap to a different asset. And I can go forward in time again if I want, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of this data in a little bit more details, because I want to do an investigation on my asset now to see why the active power was down when my expected power was high. So I'm going to click on the View Full Trend button here in the bottom right, and that's going to bring us to our trending page. This really gives us more real estate to investigate our data. So here on the trending page, you can see that my context was completely preserved. I'm looking at the same two traces of data for my GE09 asset over the same time range. And additionally, my asset search here on the right, let's just zoom into that, was also pre-populated with my asset. And so all the data coming back is related to that same asset. So it's really easy for me to add related data to my analysis here. And my cursor was also there as well, so that also made it, so that's great as well. So let's add some more data though. So these are wind turbines, and I hear wind speed is important when you're talking about wind turbines. And so I see a wind speed 10-minute rolling average here. I'm going to add that to my trend. And so it's a little hard to see, but there was added, and I can hover over that and it kind of highlights it. And if I click on it and select it, now I'm looking at my 10-minute rolling average for my wind speed. And on the trend, I can see the average wind speed is shown there at 9.8 meters per second. And there's also two dotted cursors. We call those easy cursors. And those really represent the minimum and maximum peaks over this time range that I'm looking at. So I don't know about you, but sometimes when you're analyzing data, it might be hard to actually find which is the actual min or max. And so we make that super easy for you with these easy cursors. Now I can go ahead and pin these easy cursors to my trend. And when I did that, on the bottom here, you can see that our table changed. And so if I just zoom into that so you can see it better, you can see that now I have my 3 cursors here in the table, and in between each, we give you the summary calculations between each cursor for every trace that's on the trend. So where you do the min, max, average, the delta value, and even the duration between cursors, so you don't really need to do the math anymore if you need to understand the time between 2 points that you're trying to analyze on your trend. So that's pretty cool. So I'm looking at my data here, and it's still pretty hard to see. So I'm going to go up into the stacked mode so that I can see the data in a different presentation format that makes it easy for me to see each trace easier. So next, as part of my analysis, what I want to do is I'm going to search for some temperature information on my wind turbine. And I can see there's a couple here that I want to take a look at, like the gearbox bearing temperature, gearbox temperature, and I think that's pretty good. And so we added more data to our trend here. And I can see as I click on these, it selects each trace, and also my easy cursors change as well. So it's pretty easy for me to see if there's any of the peaks of some of my temperature values are correlating with some of the other issues that I've identified with my expected and active power. Next, I'm just going to hide some of these temperatures just to get some screen real estate back. And so there's one more thing I want to take a look at, and that's the operating state of this wind turbine. So I'm going to search for operating. And we're going to trend the digital state name this time. And so you can see here on the bottom of the trend that that was trended with a 2D heat map. And that makes it really easy for me to tell what time periods have similar values. And when I hover over them, I can see what those values were. over time. And if we look at some of the ones with a cursor here, we see that there's this big time period, that kind of orange color, that was where this wind turbine was in a feathering position state. And so that feathering is really when the blades stop during an emergency shutdown, or whenever the wind speed exceeds the maximum rated speed in order to reduce unwanted rotational torque for wind gusts. So it looks like that was the issue that we had with this particular wind turbine. And I know that because I can see that there's this peak of my high wind speed that's leading right up for when this went into the feathering position. So next, now that I'm kind of done with my analysis, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this trend URL here by clicking on the button in the upper right. And that was copied this kind of trend workspace to my clipboard. And now I can go ahead and email that URL to my colleague, or I'll just open up here in another tab just so you can see what my colleague would see. And so we do support URL parameters, and we pass in, our time range, all the data, all of the trend cursors, and of course our search as well, so that your colleague can easily know what happened in your email, or they can pick up the analysis right where you left off. So that's the end of our demo. And so let's recap what we just saw. So as a veteran wind turbine engineer, I was able to find all the Windtopia wind turbines that I needed to monitor and troubleshoot around the world. The OCS Assets Explorer made it easy for me to find my assets that brings all the data together from multiple streams related to that asset. And I was able to monitor my wind turbines in real time with asset status. And I could do quick investigations, but then dive into a much more immersive visual trending and analysis workspace that's easy to share with my colleagues.